would like to invite a colleague to do the opening and the welcome on behalf of the team of the Faculty of Economics, Developmental and Business Studies. On behalf of Professor Pampo, I would like us to welcome Professor July Sibanyoni, the Head of School of Hospitality Studies. Prof. Sibanyoni, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's get for this such seminar. I'm looking forward in structure opportunities for growth, for opportunities for inclusive growth. I'll first start by indicating we say this for rapid technology advancement, which is characterized by fusion of physical, digital, and as well as biological technology. As you please to join today, I recently read an article on the fifth industrial revolution about social talking the fourth and talking sixth. Currently, I read an article on the fifth industrial. So it's an indication that we found it. And behind in terms of what? In terms of upskilling ourselves. And as a university, it's more concern. Because as the say, the students that we want to are educating students to the best in. And when they graduate, it's no longer. So in the main, there are many arguments that say university trains students to adapt. So it's about the mindset. If we can easily adapt to any situation. So with that being said, with this the theme of today, while we all know just as a pressure, that the reason why we kind of construct for others, which were more on organization, mass production, as well as in computing. And now with this fourth industrial revolution, it's more about how do we harmonize all these technology, basically the human being mechanism as well as the physical our environment as well. How do they interact together so we get a better service or better. So as per the theme, the main research focus on the areas to effectively leverage opportunities for investment. I think it will go forward to know more about what that are preventing from leveraging on this point industrial revolution is there. And then what are the benefits to try to improve so that can make things to be easier. And this period we're talking about others check. We have opportunities. It's life. After one is challenges of that in our last addressed. As you know, the issue of to see taking our jobs and do design space. When the human even designs a human being cannot be taken something. So question is how do you upskill those especially those with absolute speed. Send it to you so how do you close that? Live on anyone is left. I'm going to stopping the key. If we are technology in terms of upskilling ourselves, these technologies will our, our jobs. So that's just a clear understanding to say it is important. And again, how do you also influence? So program director with that, I would, on behalf of the team of our faculty, I would like to open up what us.
Facebook again.
How
The Facebook.
it's how
Wait, I want the URL.
it's, uh, when they see all this and they say, so what as a team to so that they can see the same as we can see that those who are
Wait.
even the industry.
Is this
in that
step
sector,
live? They couldn't connect. I copied them there from that.
just what they have, just to so I really my friends
Facebook page where we just
in the uh,
there you go.
it's
Like,
so and I know
should you go to
that people see so we like this. And this is one that's to side. So that's
so it's this like this one.
that's
Just need to
is what thank you so much. You're all welcome. So here now and
yeah.
I will
So sister URL. So you
Thank you for the kind welcome, Prof. Sibayoni.
it's very good.
I want to respond to your comments. So it's not yet time. So you're gonna have time to respond more especially to the presentation and for us to interact to have a dialogue as to what will be presented. So I'm looking forward to vibrant engagements as we engage throughout the seminar, and we've got also respondents of the faculty will also be formally respond to the presentations. For those who are only joining us now, Prof. Sibayoni mentioned that in the morning we had signed a we had the Rafiso Trust, chairperson of the Rafiso Trust, and also of the chief of the sciences. And with that being said, I also want to indicate that Judge Sian has been very instrumental in making sure that session takes place and also this research seminar takes place together with the team, the NATO, and others who are also here with us. Some are not able to join us. Okay, the formal presentation of the article, Failures to Effectively Leveraging Opportunities Within the Fourth Industrial Revolution in South Africa, will be presented by Dr. Makodi Weti, the CEO of the Rafiso Trust. Dr. Over to you.
I haven't been at school for a long time. I can't get out of it.
Give me
Can I use this? Okay, hold on. Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Is there a way that we maybe
Thank you for a very warm welcome.
I would help?
And we are really, really excited to be part of this journey. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you all for welcoming us. And thank you all for making time to engage this very interesting topic. And I don't know what it says about us if already probably say this should have been about the sixth industrial revolution. But I hope that the little work that we have done will begin to trigger the kind of conversations that will make us to leapfrog the fifth and the sixth revolution. My view is that it's not too late. We must start.
That's the key.
So,
There's a problem here.
so this is a study actually that was done 5 years ago. Is it 5 years ago? Yeah, it was 5 years ago. I must acknowledge Professor Ojo. Actually, he's at Rhodes.
And this is the URL. This one.
And Mujaji,
You put URL at the end.
Dick as well.
That's why I didn't connect.
Montano, who is now with Alan Gray,
It stops here.
and myself, who were part of writing this journal. Actually, it's one of the 4 that has come out of the study. And maybe just to give the context, one of the things that Kagiso Trust grapples with is how do we contribute towards people having meaningful economic lives? Are there dispensations that are happening? Are there things that are happening as we live out our lives that we can begin to leverage and take advantage of? And at that time, there was a strong view that everyone is talking about this industrial revolution. Can we do something? And I still recall at that time, Kenya was talking about M-Pesa. I don't know how many of you would remember it. Kenya, regarded as part of Africa, we are seen as the third world, but they were already with their banking system not at the first world level. Were able to take this technology and do something different. So this was really triggered by that to say, how else can we ensure that as Africans, we take advantage of the technologies and the changes that are happening? And hence the article that says, but there are barriers. Do we understand what are these barriers? And where are these barriers more pronounced? We couldn't avoid the fact that when you talk about South Africa, there is a huge context. There's vast differences. And with Kagiso Trust work mainly in rural and in townships, we were biased. We were biased to say, however the lens that we used, we want to use the lens of rural and marginalized townships. Hence, we were worried to say, what are those barriers and can these opportunities be leveraged? So my learned friends, here's your learned friends. I'm not going to talk about what was the methodology, the sample, but just to say that this was a semi-structured. The other articles that you have access to, I think, were also were more qualitative in nature, but this was more of a structured interview methodology. So what we will cover quickly, and I know I don't have a lot of time, we'll just talk about what at that time we saw as a South Africa's a snapshot. What does it look like in terms of the readiness and the developmental gaps? What did we understand for as a fourth industrial revolution context in South Africa? What are those barriers that are there that inhibit us to leverage these opportunities? The future of work, I think Prof has already spoken about it. And what are the critical pathways? And what should the next step be? I think the Vice Chancellor mentioned this. We are coming from a perspective that says it's important to talk, but people are hungry for action. So whatever work we are trying to do amongst ourselves, let's allow ourselves permission to think from an action point of view, so that we say, let's foster these dialogues to become a platform, whether we talk amongst ourselves as academics, or we talk to the private sector, or NGOs like ourselves. Can we give ourselves permission to be action-oriented? in order to take advantage of the 4IR. But also we realize that unless we understand the context or understand our work in the framework of partnerships, of ecosystem, because there's a lot to learn at the same time. And therefore we need different people holding different spaces. As an NGO, we can hold a certain space, the academics can hold a certain space, private sector, so that when we bring all of them together, we should be able to move faster and to be better. So partnership development is critical, and that's why we are celebrating today. And that's why we've got our trustees here, and thank you so much. They made time to say, we're not only sending executives, we want to go there because we want to hold each other accountable for the change that we want to see. Just to introduce the research context, the digital revolution shapes economic value and creation. It shapes work. And we noted deliberately that it's not either or. I think South Africa has changed or has moved towards appreciating that we should not only talk about work, we should also talk about economic creation as people getting into business, thinking about business in a much scaled way. But we also appreciated that this happens at the time when our socio-economic challenges seem to be trapping us. You know, the kind of progress we would have wanted to have by today, it feels very, very elusive. I guess it's not only for South Africans, it's all over the world. We're having a few people becoming billionaires. Actually, the language billionaire is so common now. When I was your age, it was millionaires, now it's billionaires. But at the same time, we have people that are literally grappling with um, economic inclusion. Francis already mentioned this. We are sitting at the intersection of digital infrastructure. We're also sitting at the point where this digital infrastructure is not evenly distributed. As Capital Trust, we experienced it in a painful way when we were having a program in education in Sekhukhune, for example, where our offices and the world around where our offices are, which is Joburg, literally life was going on, learning was going on. But when we go to the project space, things had to stop because there's no equal distribution of digital infrastructure. So infrastructure and access is a challenge, which is what the research has also confirmed. But also the effects of skills and skills deficit and education. That we have a certain subset that have got the best of the best, but we've got a dire need in certain spaces where literacy, digital skills hinders inclusion and therefore economic activity. So those are the areas that we saw as a big challenge. Let's mention that the research also looks at the fact that 4IR, it has not been an event. We appreciate that it has been an accumulation of things. As technology improves, we can do more with what we had before, but we couldn't use it because certain items maybe were too big and we could not use. For example, when you talk about the phone, it has got so many things that encompass a lot of technologies. So it's actually a merging of digital infrastructure, biological assets, physical, and also it's all of this is transforming production and social systems. We are also mindful that when we talk about 4IR, we talk about it's very critical that we think differently about how policy is developed. We cannot afford to have isolated policy development. It demands in itself inclusive policy development. And I know naturally when we talk about policymakers, we are more inclined to say my department, that department. Unfortunately, for we cannot optimize it unless there's that mindset of we force ourselves together to be in the room. So those are the other challenges that we've noted. What are the barriers? I think some of them was mentioned. In added to digital connectivity and infrastructure is the issue of high data costs. I don't need to preach this. I think it's a massive, massive challenge. And we found that people are saying, I see it, but I cannot participate. I have the connectivity, but I don't have the data. So we have this still as an issue even today. And this is what the research also shows. I must also comment here that one of, I think the COO mentioned that Escapiso Trust, in the area where we are operating in Sekhukhune, we tried to contribute by building some infrastructure because it's not commercially viable for the telcos to participate in that area. So we solved one problem. But then there was an issue to say, what is the cost of data to access and use that technology? So you can see now that you cannot have one section and not talking to the other area. So digital high data cost and connectivity was also a big issue. But there was an issue from skills deficits, literacy challenges, and weak digital culture. We found that there are certain people they prefer to say, I'll stay where I am, I'm comfortable. The appetite, they didn't see economic value. We have a very good example of this when we talk about there is an agricultural program in Gabiso Trust where we couldn't get the farmers to use technology. While people are telling us that precision agriculture requires technology. Farmers will say, I prefer to be touching the soil and looking at the weather and doing things the same way that we've been doing it. So the whole thing about adoption of technology, the literacy became a challenge. Digital adoption, we also saw it as a challenge in the report. Another area of a barrier, we spoke about economic exclusion, entrepreneurship. We talk about entrepreneurial mindset. Certain people are saying when you talk about fourth industrial revolution, you are talking about huge risks. I don't know whether it's going to make economic benefit if I participate and do less of how I was doing things before. So that entrepreneurial mindset to take risk pronounced itself. There's also the issue about crime. I had a story share about a school that has just closed that relied on online schooling, and it's a high school. They had to close because the infrastructure is already taken. You know, when you take an infrastructure from my house that I can't connect, it's still bad enough. But when the school has to close, I don't know whether that person understood the impact of what they were doing. And profits in case that so it's quite sad. And I met the principal who's saying I cannot. I'm mourning. She said I've never cried as much as I've cried because I could feel that I've taken the people's futures into a risky spin. So yes, this is an asset, but at the same time, it can really be damaging if it's not taken care of properly. So crime is a big issue. Okay, let me move towards closure. One of the things that we were mindful of and that came from the studies is that the fears are real. There's this part that says we must embody this thing, we must embrace but it's also going to take our jobs. I don't think we've answered that question. I think it's there. We are talking about we must now be reskilled. There are people who are saying we must reskill, which I think is the right thing to do. But it does make it a very uncomfortable space to be, where you have to think about reskilling. How long does it take to reskill? What are the costs of reskilling? So there's this labor resistance that comes with, there are tensions that are coming in the economy due to what we need to happen. We need to manage the workforce transition. So those are the kind of things that we need to now to look at as we look into the future. Policy challenges. We are still waiting for a clear AI policy in the country. When we are already using it, and I know you use it more than all of us, eh? We're already using it. What are the rules of the game? There's so much about technology that we need to just step back, and maybe it's about all of us making the right kind of noise so that the right policies can be done at a pace that is required. We need strategic partnerships with government, and we need to understand the developmental implementation. I gave example as Kagiso Trust, what we tried to do in that environment where learning was not taking place. Our head of education is here. They pushed us to put infrastructure because we could not get the telcos to go to that corner. They don't have, some of them don't have the library, not the laboratories. We thought, what about the VR so that they can at least see? So we are testing some of the things. We are not yet there. We are testing. We're trying to do learning management system. Her teacher program had to stop if teachers cannot come into class. Can we put a learning management system? So we are all trying to pilot how can we use these technologies to make the developmental work a bit different. We're also trying to say everybody does not have to have paper to know the work of Kagiso Trust. Somebody was asking, why don't you have an app where we can go and find out about you? So finally, we have an app, and I should have had a barcode so that people can download. You can see we are not there as well. We're trying to. So yes, ideally, when we look forward, how should we think about this? We believe that the research is in joining us to think universally, to think from a digital connectivity point of view, to be future orientated, to deal with our fear of the future, and to bring in that culture that will embrace change. We believe that when we think of digital economy, we should think of inclusiveness and also collaboration of ecosystem actors. So pathways, there's a pathway of policy and partnership and ecosystem coordination that needs to take place. Future skills, as the COO mentioned, we did some work at the University of Pretoria. I think we need to speak more about this and engage more about what are the futures of education, futures that we need to be focusing on to embrace technology. And lastly, inclusive growth and active economic participation. In another work that we did, it was quite interesting to see how it is important for the agency of individuals. Unfortunately, this is one area that requires individual agency to participate. So we really believe that opportunities are there, infrastructure challenges, policy gap, learning, reskilling, but there are critical strategic opportunities. One of the work that we have done as Kagiso Trust is to work with one of the big NGOs to really get government to come to the party to at least zero rate public benefit organizations in terms of the cost of data. So we believe that the more we talk about this, the more we raise our voices, we should be able to take advantage of the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth industrial revolution. I thank you.
Another round of applause. I'm sure you have taken notes. Today is not about review or wife or review truth. We are having a dialogue. We are having a discussion. I'm gonna call upon our respondents for them to come and respond. Our current respondents, Professor Andrew Malesa and also Dr. Sons to come forward, please. Thank you.
Do you have it? This light. This light, do you have it? Okay. Oh, nice. First, to listen to all if we can, that's
She's working at jail.
oh, okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Wait.
I'm going to thank faculty for Papa for inviting me to participate in this forum to share my thoughts on this important topic. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I would like to take this opportunity to extend a special thank you to the leadership for championing strategic collaboration. I actually think that scarcity of meaningful and strategic partnerships at local, regional, and national, I think it's one of the key barriers that we come to the opportunities of 4IR. I think that was pointed out quite clearly. So to those who have been I'm from the Faculty of Economics, Development and Business Sciences. I'd like to just recognize our keynote speaker, Dr. Martin from Cancer Pratt. So thank you so much for those who are actually remarkable presentation and for providing us a comprehensive overview of this topic. I think we can all agree that the presentation was insightful and provocative. I actually felt a sense of being challenged, So thank you for challenging us to actually break down barriers and build a technological that we want. So we welcome the challenge. So your presentation actually highlighted several key takeaways that I found particularly compelling. And so in the next maybe 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to highlight what those key points are and perhaps share a few thoughts of my own and maybe leave the audience with a few thought-provoking questions to kickstart our Q&A. All right. And I think as alluded to by the speaker, I think she was talking about how to ordinary South Africans lead meaningful economic lives, And so it's quite clear that South Africa is facing, I think, a number of macroeconomic challenges, such as unemployment, poverty. And so in order to lay the background to what I want to talk about, I thought it was going to be a useful starting point, to just briefly look at where we stand in terms of our social economic landscape as a country. So official unemployment in the first quarter of 2026 stood at 32.7%. And if you are talking expanded unemployment, which looks at people that are discouraged but that want to work over, so that number is significant. And if you're talking youth or graduate unemployment, the number is just bigger. And meanwhile, our economy grew by 0.5% in the same period, 2026. And if you look at our GNI, so what I'm doing, I'm just giving you a snapshot of where we stand so that I springboard from there and highlight why we need to adopt 4IR. If you look at the GNI coefficient for South Africa, it is actually estimated at 0.65 according to IMF rather this year. And so it actually ranks South Africa as one of the most unequal societies in the world. And this is actually despite the fiscal redistribution that we see every month in terms of the payouts that are given to people that are marginalized, the grants and so forth. And even that effort is not gap between the wealthy and the poor.
And so there's actually empirical evidence that shows that economic growth is actually a powerful instrument for addressing these challenges. So for me, the real challenge for South Africa, and I guess for all of us, is that it's no longer really simply to grow the economy, but I think we need to grow the economy faster, more inclusively, and more sustainably. I think the speaker rightly emphasized the importance of industrialization in raising production and employment levels. So, and then she emphasized that there are certain key specific barriers that we need to overcome in order to really tap into the full potential of 4IR. I want to echo this statement by the Nobel Prize winning economist and Yale University professor Robert Shiller. He says that we cannot wait until there are massive dislocations in our society to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution. And I think last week in a strategic planning session that I attended, I was actually introduced to this African proverb that says, I thought it was profound, it says, if the rhythm of the drum changes, the dense step must adapt. So I think she earlier on gave an example of farmers that wants to feel the texture of the soil. And I think we really need to adapt and move on with the times. Talking about low economic inclusion, so I'm trying to claim what I have to say within the next few minutes. So pardon me if I'm going marathon, but I'm going to try and slow down a little bit. So the speaker's view about low economic inclusion is actually particularly a strong one for me. Why is that? Because inclusivity, in my view, it should be a foundational design requirement right from the start. She was talking about inclusion at policy development level. And I thought that that is actually something that we can address as a country. She mentioned that the digital revolution is reshaping economic value. And so the question is, how do we balance technological advancement with social economic inclusion? All right, it's something that I'd like us to reflect maybe. Among other things, I think South Africa must address two vital questions. What is building the technology or the technological infrastructure that we are envisaging in 4IR? And as a country, how do we lead in some of these technologies in such a way that we establish ourselves as business? And I want to extend that point and indicate that if we do not act quickly, I think there's a risk that South African businesses may not be able to compete with global competitors who adopt 4IR more quickly. I think Prof. Sibanyoni was talking about that we are already in this 5IR and 6IR. I think I need to know about that one. In abstract, South Africa must break down the cycle of only consuming global innovations instead of producing value and growth locally. And I think it's a point that she echoed quite clearly. So the concern here is that South Africa and I think the broader developing economies, they risk becoming permanent consumers rather than creators of economic value. So some of the leading companies of the future should actually have their origin in Africa. All right, so regarding the manual automation dilemma, she was talking about labor market disruptions, and I'm just paraphrasing. So there's actually a real danger if you think about workers in the low skills roles. So there's a danger of them being displaced. And so I think there's need to really map out which sectors or which industries are going to be disrupted with the adoption of 4IR technologies. And so I've got a couple of questions that I wrote. And so what jobs are we disrupting in the next 5 to 10 years? And the next question is, what are the jobs that are going to be relevant in the next 5 to 10 years? And what can we do now to upskill the current workforce so that we get there? All right. So to those in the room who may be familiar with this particular theory, there is what is called the Schumpeter theory of creative destruction. It argues that the old is continuously destroyed to free resources for creating new. So it essentially argues that creation requires destruction. All right. So it says that wealthier and more productive societies, the economy must be willing to allow older, less efficient industries and jobs to be displaced. All right. So if we take a look at history, so the transition from the horse transportation to automobile, I think it served as a lesson for the future on how 4IR is going to wipe out outdated industries. Okay. So in the past, before modern vehicles, I think horses were the primary mode of transportation for people and cargo. And there were horse trainers that lost their jobs along with many that were in that value chain. But if you look on the other side of that, I think there were many new jobs that were created in the car manufacturing, in road and bridge construction. So I'm just throwing these examples so that we embrace 4R even more strongly. So automobiles actually brought better transport, convenience, and efficiency. So other examples that come to mind are textiles, rentals, camera films, and so forth. But I also want to point out certain realities that in the new industries that we are envisaging, there's going to be creation of new jobs, all right? But there's a concern that those new jobs are likely to be more skilled towards high skilled roles. And if you look at South Africa, if you look at the labor force of South Africa, it's such that the majority are concentrated in the low to medium skills. And so there's a concern that there might be a huge mismatch or disparity between labor demand and labor supply. And so the real concern there is that the dividends of economic growth may accrue to the minority and bypass the general workforce, worsening the already existing inequalities. And so I think that was the point that was mentioned by Dr. Mabuse, that we need inclusion. We need, not to leave anyone behind. So I think that also brings us to the matter of low literacy and skills levels that was echoed this morning. She was mentioning that lack of skills hinders digital inclusion. All right. So whilst I was listening to it, I found myself wondering, how does our university vision to be an African university leading in creating opportunities for sustainable development through innovation translate into practice within the context of OIR? In other words, as UNP, how do you leverage innovation to create sustainable 4IR driven opportunities in an African context? So it's a question that I guess we need to grapple with. So it seems there's an urgent need. I think she made that point clearly, that we need to align our education, our basic education, our tertiary curriculum with the demands of 4IR. So the question that I'm also posing is that in what ways can university drive solutions to this balance? She was talking about futures of education, all right? She also mentioned the issue of the barrier of so she said that even though our digital infrastructure is quite advanced in South Africa, it seems that it is not even to think about, the urban populations and the rural areas, and so the founder of World Economic Forum, I think by the name of Klaus Schwab, he says there's never been a time of greater promise or greater peril. So research has actually shown that there's a stark divide between how people view the promises and the perils of modern technological advancement. So on one hand, we've got the wealthy people that are empowered by educational resources. They see 4IR as an opportunity. And the marginalized and the low-income groups, on the other hand, they fear economic exclusion and job loss. All right. And she also spoke about historical and cultural anxieties. I'm just paraphrasing around the issue of technology, that it actually shapes how people view 4IR. So the question that I'm also asking here is that how do ordinary South Africans today view the 4IR? What are the attitudes of South Africans generally to this issue of fourth industrial revolution? So as I wrap up, I entitled this slide on the 8, because when I read the article, there were 8 obstacles that were identified, but I think he mentioned that at that time that was what was there. But I also want to argue that South Africa faces additional hurdles that must be addressed and fully unlock It's for potential, and I've got just a few here. So I got here lack of access to funding. So there's an argument that small, medium enterprise, small businesses in general, they are lacking funding to acquire these innovations and tech so that they can join. So we need funding. And so it's important also to just reconcile that point with the fact that as a country, we are facing fiscal sustainability issues, high debt issues, and all of that. I also wrote here low levels of R&D. So how do we boost up research and development? Right? So it's important, and our research also is like as academic institutions. I think it shouldn't just be papers, though I appreciate this paper. This was a good article. It should translate, I think, into patterns, actual things that can be used in our society. And the last point is shortage of meaningful and strategic collaboration. It's another point I think she mentioned in the first slide. I think she called it developing partnerships. I think. So as I bring my talk to a close, I think it is really important as academia, universities, policymakers, business sector, civil society, and other stakeholders to scale up our respective roles and our impact to break down this sustainable and leverage 4IR opportunities to drive inclusive growth. And moreover, by amplifying our collaborative efforts locally, continentally, and globally, I think we can overcome some of these barriers to sustainable. And with that said, I'd like to say thank you everybody for having me today. And once again, thanks to the keynote speaker, Dr. Manse, for that presentation. And thank you. Over to you, Program Director.
Thank you. Program Director, I'd like to just acknowledge and thank you the VC, the DVC, and the Dean and business there. And then Dr. Mietzi and the representatives of the Trust. It's a great privilege for me to give this address because it's something that I really believe in when I read the article. So thank you for that. Also welcome to the other colleagues that are here. It's I appreciate the people that are joining online, but I also appreciate the people that are here. It shows us that the fourth industrial revolution is still human interaction, which I believe is important. I'd like to just introduce myself as well. I'm Dr. Von Solaps. I'm a tourism and marketing lecturer here at the university. And the lecturers that do know me, they do know that I do love technology. So if there's an app on my phone that can make things easier, I probably have got it on my phone. Okay. But it's a privilege, like I said, to respond to this presentation today and the academic address and the article that framed today's presentation. As academics, we are trained to analyze evidence, question assumptions, and contribute to knowledge. That's the research aspect that we believe in university. Yet today reminds us that the purpose of knowledge extends far beyond understanding the world. We should aim to improve the world that we live in. And I'd like to just begin with a simple observation. I've got a 6.5-month-old baby. And when my cell phone screen or my iPad screen lights up, you drop what he's doing and he'll reach my phone. And it's crazy that he doesn't understand the opportunities technology brings. He doesn't understand the risks that it brings, but he do know that it's something significant that he needs to reach for. And as a parent, I know that it is my responsibility to not one day keep it from him, but I will need to educate him on the risks and the barriers that he's going to present. And as I reflected on today's events, the article and the speech that I need to give here, I sort of realized that perhaps South Africa finds itself in the same type of situation. We are reaching towards a future shaped by artificial intelligence, digital transformation, the fourth, fifth, sixth industrial revolution that is surrounding us. And the question is no longer to me whether these changes are coming. They are here. We can't debate that anymore. The real question is will we prepare our people to participate meaningfully in the future? And that is is why this article was so important to me. Is at first glance, it appears to be about technology. But I think, or I believe that actually the article is about people. Technology has never transformed societies on their own. We have also always needed people to deal with that technologies, to develop it, and to manage that technologies. And Dr. Moeti discussed the barriers in the article that continue to prevent South Africa from fully leveraging the opportunities that this fourth industrial revolution is offering us. High data costs, unequal access, inadequate digital literacy, concerns around privacy and security, the challenges of automation, concern and low entrepreneurial intent, and the persistent social inequalities. And we identify those challenges, and usually identifying challenges is the easy part. It's easy to see where the problems lie, but sometimes overcoming them, that's the hard part. That's the part that requires work. And I also see these challenges and these barriers not merely as technological barriers, but it's also human barriers, things that we struggle with every day. And they remind us that innovation without inclusion cannot deliver meaningful development. And that came out in the presentation as well, the inclusiveness of the fourth industrial revolution. And I believe that that's one of the article's contribution is that it reminds us that this fourth industrial revolution is not fundamentally about machines, but it's about the people that need those machines, whether they realize it or not, whether they are scared of using it or not, whether they know that whether one exists or not. But we need to ensure that every South African, and not just the privileged few, have the opportunity to participate in the economy, has the opportunity to innovate and create, and are able to contribute meaningfully to the economy. And I love, where's Andrew now? So we still upset that. But I love it when because he's in economics, he's into economics. I love it when economists explain things because they explain things differently than what I understand it. They understand, I always see that they see the bigger picture in a different way. But this whole scenario of the fourth industrial revolution and the almost disadvantaged rural community, it's very relevant to South Africa. South Africa has never lacked potential. Our universities produce remarkable graduates. I believe our entrepreneurs demonstrate resilience and innovation, and our young people has got extraordinary creativity. Yet we remain confronted with inequality, unemployment, and uneven access to opportunity. The challenges before us, therefore, is not simply technological advancement, it is inclusive technological advancement that include, as mentioned, digital, biological, and physical aspects. Research helps us to understand that these barriers exist, and we saw that from the article. But this is where today's occasion becomes so significant for me, is research tells us what the challenges are, but partnership, which was also mentioned by Dr. Mietzi, determine whether those challenges are overcome. And let's face it, that's what we are striving for, is to overcome these challenges. That idea, I believe, captures the significance of the MOU that was signed this morning. And we've witnessed more than the signing of a document today. We have witnessed a commitment. And I believe that commitment also includes that research should not end when it is published. That universities, we shouldn't measure our success by the number of graduates that we produce, but by the impact those graduates can make in these societies that was mentioned. And Regisa Trust, I have to say, you are such a good example of proving the difference that can be made in society. The article concludes by calling for a coordinated fourth industrial revolution. Here we go. The article concludes by calling for a coordinated national approach and engaging with and leveraging the opportunities of the fourth industrial revolution. And we can't accomplish this alone. We need collaboration, which is essential, and that's what today's partnership is so appropriate. It is, or it's not just appropriate, it is a necessity that we need to continue to invest in. The Giese Trust, they bring, I've Googled you, you bring decades of experience and community development. For generations, you have worked alongside communities and recognized the development that begins not by doing things for people, but really working with them. And Dr. Magitsi, I love the way that the concept of opportunity was embedded in your presentation as well. Creating opportunities is something that UMP really believes in. You see it on all of our banners, it is our motto. And we strive for that. The University of Mpumalanga is one of South Africa's youngest universities. We didn't necessarily inherit the centuries of histories that some of the other universities in South Africa have. But what we have inherited is something I believe that's equally valuable and appropriate for today. And that's the opportunity to imagine what a South African university should become. And that's a university that is rooted in its communities. A university that addresses the problems of our province and our communities that we live in or that lives around us. And a university where research isn't measured by the number of citations, but by the positive impact that we can have on people's life. That is a responsibility that we need to embrace, I believe, with humility. Universities, we occupy a unique place in society because we educate and we discover and we question, and perhaps the greatest responsibility is that we have the ability to connect knowledge with action. And when I've thought about this, I thought knowledge without action might have a very limited impact. And action without knowledge might lack direction. But if you combine those two things together, which we've done today with partnership, I think that is a very good way to achieve success with us and this fourth industrial revolution and the problems that our society face. As someone who lectures and understands the concept of marketing, I'm reminded that business who sees obstacles as a hindrance and try to avoid them, they often fail. And the opposite side is of businesses that, and I think the people as well, that see opportunities, that see these challenges and find ways to overcome them, see them as opportunities. Those are the organizations that tend to be successful because they innovate and they are more aware of the community that they operate in. And the same principles applies, I believe, with the fourth industrial revolution. There are challenges. We became aware of them through the article and through the presentation. But technologies create possibilities and partnerships ensures those possibilities reach communities. And that's another reason why today's MOU signing was so relevant. Partnership ensures that possibilities reach communities, and for me, it helps to transform the academic conversation into a shared commitment. And there are researchers here and you and me. We welcome those commitments because we want to do research that have meaningful impact in the communities that we operate. The article and the MOU reminds me that universities do not exist apart from society. We exist because of society, and I also believe that we exist for society. To the leadership and the management of Cohesive Trust, I want to thank you for walking or wanting to walk this journey with the University of Mpumalanga. I hope that our students, or I know that our students, will become innovators and entrepreneurs and responsible citizens that can follow in Kagiso Trust's footsteps and make a positive contribution to society. And then I'd like to conclude where I began with my 6-month-old child reaching towards a screen because he senses something significant. Our nation too is reaching for a future that's filled with possibility. And whether that future becomes one of greater inclusion, prosperity, or human development, that will depend not on technology alone, but on the choices we make today and the impact that we have on society today. So today, just by being here, we've made one of those choices. We have chosen to collaborate over isolation. We have chosen knowledge over ignorance. And I also believe we've chosen to take action over being complacent. And perhaps most importantly, to transform barriers into opportunities. Thank you.
To say something.
Are we able to switch on the slide?
The lights.
If possible. Can we give our respondents a round of applause? Hello to our online attendees. We are now at the session where we take questions and answers, and I believe colleagues are ready with their questions. While you get ready and while the microphones are also getting ready, from the respondents and also from the presentation, I picked up a few very interesting words: inclusivity, skilling, the skills gap, the role of partnerships, policy impact, policy challenges, active citizenship, citizens that are intentional in participating in the economy of our country, digital access challenges, the cost of accessing technology and digital, the impact of we can have the most sophisticated recent technologies, but we also need to speak about the impact of crime. The role of partnerships and collaborators. We must say to the Graniso Trust that you've got a good choice for choosing us. You've made a good choice. But the impact of partnership, every presenter spoke about partnership, about collaborators. But the correct one, the correct partnership, the correct collaborator. The role of universities. We keep on saying there's a skills gap. Do we have skills gap? And Prof in the morning talked about 5-6 IR. Are we behind, or are we where we are at now, and we are moving to where we are supposed to be? We don't even have our policies ready as yet. You know, the 4IR policy, we know the story around it, but are we behind, or are we where we are supposed to be? And from there on, we fix our things and we move forward to the 5th and to the 6th. Those are the conversations I would like us to discuss. Inadequate digital skills, economic exclusion, the future skills. We've been talking about skills of the future for the past 4-5 years, saying that we need to revise our curriculums, we need to invite industry to our advisory boards, and to have industries in our advisory boards, in academic departments, in schools. Why? Because we want to produce the relevant skills that are required by them, because they are our clients. Our economy is also our clients. We want to respond to the economy. So for me, the issue of skills gap, it's something that I'm battling with. You know, and also looking at the unemployment rate. Now we have we are using different terms: active job seekers, non-active job seekers, those who are employable, and those who are not employable. Yet we are talking about unemployment. So we are trying to break that number so that it's small, because we are naming it, we are giving it different names. But the issue is that our unemployment rate is too high. Can we discuss? Please raise your hand, and also those online.
Thank you so much. If I start to open, I think thank you to from your presentation, especially on the issue of and the issue of also issue of crime, especially in cities. All the traffic lights mostly as to when this crime has happened. So when you bring to try to therefore strategy, can't we harmonize the system to I think that system it will make it easy to to interpret the system to interpret. So what I'm trying to say so interpretation is strategy to say with the system that it is how it's what benefit would be kept as much as issues of because the issue of privacy or authority knows of itself. But it's just that it's regulated how it's processed. And that's where strategy can come to say how the system to get to choose the crowd.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask the presenter, the CEO, to be ready to respond, but also our respondents. Doc also to assist in responding. And the colleagues from ETBS, are they here? Colleagues from ETBS, are they here? Andrew said you will take care of the questions when he left. He said, I'm joking. But let's all participate in responding.
I chopped it.
Yeah, let's take 2 more.
I chopped it.
Thank you so much, Doc. So I am a lecturer in the School of Agricultural Sciences. So when I was listening to Doc unpack the article, I was quite happy. I was waiting for her to say something about agriculture. So the current challenges that we are having, you mentioned them, that the issue of trying to move with the world to ensure that our farmers are practicing precision agriculture and they make use of technology in their farming. So that is a challenge that we are facing. For example, the Department of Agriculture has developed a livestock identification traceability system. However, the farmers do not update. So how it's supposed to work, the farmers are supposed to record the information if they are selling new animals, if they are ones that are born, if they're vaccinated, things like that, to also ensure proper disease control. So now the challenge is that the system is there, but how do we get our farmers to actively participate in using it? Right? And then the second challenge that we have is the issue of a high unemployment rate in agricultural graduates, right? So how can we, as the University of Mpumalanga, lecturers or academics, ensure that our students have the edge? How can we ensure that our students have these technologies and skills so that they can be those assets that are going to be the drivers of this precision agriculture, so that also to make agriculture fashionable, because it's one of those subjects where students run away from, and it's not fancy enough. It's not, it's not the ideal waking up, going to the farm. But today, even this morning, for us to have the energy to speak, you had something to eat. And that is because there's someone who did agriculture and is doing it well. So if we can try and ensure that our students are actively involved, particularly using technology, we can then attract them and make them also suitable for the industry, because that is also a challenge to say, okay, you are teaching, but as the industry, how does the industry benefit from the students that we are producing? So if we put technology in front, then that would give us the edge. So I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on those 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take the second.
Thank you so much. Deveshri Naidu, Sociology. I was very intrigued in learning that the paper identifies education and skills as central to South Africa's ability to benefit from 4AI, 4IR. However, if we look ahead towards AI and what we should be teaching our children, I think it's very important to question, are we preparing our teachers enough to prepare our students? Are we preparing our teachers enough to move beyond getting children to just be users of AI? But are we getting our teachers prepared enough to teach our students to use AI to be innovators, critical thinkers, and creators of future work opportunities? I think that's something we really need to ponder on in terms of the education system being the microcosm of society. Thank you.
Thank you. We can allow Doc to respond before we take another round.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to be the only one
Yes.
to respond. Our trustees are here. I know Prof is very good in this topic. So, and the data as well as Temba judging. Maybe just to talk to the first point. I'm always fascinated by the M-Pesa story because it was addressing a unique problem. Yes, technology came from the West, but they had a certain developmental issue and they thought and used the technology differently. Somebody says people that are generators of solutions are those that feel the pain of the problem. I am convinced that with the vast number of developmental challenges that we have as South Africa and as Africa, and the social ills, these are opportunities where we can think about how do we integrate what we have. So I think I agree with the point you have raised, Prof. It's definitely a mindset shift that we need to be thinking through. How do we then begin to do things differently in an integrated way? And if I comment on the issue of agri, it's quite interesting. Somebody was saying, show the farmers that it makes financial sense. Don't show them or give them technology as a new idea, fancy thing to have, but show them that it makes economic benefit. And it really stuck with me that there was a demonstration around using technology to test the saturation or the irrigation. And most of us, we think of irrigate more, irrigate more, irrigate. And actually that count showed that where there was lesser irrigation, that's where production was higher than where there was irrigation. But if one does not have the technology to test that, it does take away the opportunities. So I think there are many things, given the climate change that we are having, that we can begin to use this irrigation, this technology, livestock tracking. as well. You know, people are complaining, those are living around the borders. There's technologies that we need to be embracing to protect our stock. So definitely one is supporting that. Around how we preparation of I agree with you, starts with the teachers, and we cannot leave the teachers behind. Actually, they need to be, and unfortunately, it's the reality that the bulk of the budget of education goes towards science. So the luxury of introducing different ways of doing things, technology, the computers. We've seen it where we give an example where we are sitting. One of the things we are grappling with, if if they've got access to learning management system, who's giving them data to access that information? For example, when do they access that information that is in the learning management system? How do we make it more compliant so that they can use that information? VR technology, how do we scale that? Is it scalable? So those are the things that we need to also grapple with, and we can't stop. We really need to be saying, how do we educate our teachers and how do we support them? Yeah, maybe let me stop there and other colleagues can.
Before we take another round of questions, is there anybody who wants to add to the response?
I don't have, but I want to add to the response and also provide some examples of things that I'm doing. I'm sure I'm going to say something. I regard myself as the most laziest person ever. So I'm trying to find things that makes my life easy. So technology is one of the closest friends to me. I'm doing my medicinal plants. So one of the concepts is to take to lab so that we test them whether they're working. But because it's very much expensive to do the in vitro and preclinical trial, we are using a technology to test. So we call that molecular talking systematic biology. So that's one another way of lowering the costs and use technology to assist us. If the companies we got is very basic, also a way to manipulate the leading, we call it a lead optimization, so that we can be able to get the company that is working. So when we go and do the preclinical trials, we know we are working on what that we can be able to. So technology is really moving how we and simplify how things have to be. But I align myself a lot with what Ms. Naidu has just said. Our lecturers well equipped with necessary tools to use this technology. For example, I'm using a GitHub to do a gamification that is linked to Moodle so that my student can be able to be interactive, and then my Moodle activities should not be just the multiple choice questions. But do other lecturers know GitHub? Is the university investing in GitHub? Is the university aware of GitHub? So those are some things that we are looking at when we look at this partnership to say, from this relationship that we are building, expectation is there that we're going to learn from one another. We're going to advance each other because it's from learning and advancing each other that we can be able to solve problems that we have. Normally, people used to say the current generation is a technological generation. I always disagree with them. They only know how to press the phone and open go to the app they're supposed to go to. some using those technology to the city of what they're supposed to do. For example, even if you give them a phone, it's not like they can code. Even if the code is there to solve, it's not like they can cyber security their phones. So we need to come together as entities and organizations and try to find solutions from this technology and not just putting it aside, but finding a way to integrate it with what we're doing. That's
Thank you for that response. I would be adding to it, but it's about changing our mind shift. Because we've got these smart gadgets, smartphones, and some Wi-Fi's. Others can say accessibility is a challenge. But for those who've got access to them, what are we doing with them? Can I take questions?
I think the earlier conversation, someone raised this point which is close to my heart, and made an example of agriculture. I suppose it's not necessarily agriculture, it could be other sectors. But she mentioned that there are a lot of students who are graduates of agriculture unemployed. And I thought maybe it's a statement worth a little bit of exploration to say, is it because of the city does not have the infrastructure to give the student a qualification relevant to agriculture? Or is it because agriculture, the agriculture sector is not providing the opportunities for those students to be absorbed? What could be the reason that's creating that disjunction? I'm just using agriculture as an example, but I'm just keen to say to what extent have we started to think of what is creating this constraint that we have graduates who cannot find placement in the agriculture space? Is it an infrastructure and technology issue at the level of the university? But what could be some of the reasons? Thanks.
Okay, I'll take the next. I'm sure my colleagues in agriculture, they are getting ready to respond. There was also a hint there at the back, talk about market saturation. Is it that there aren't enough jobs? Or is it that our graduates cannot plug into the relevant jobs that are there?
Okay, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Rosanne from the psychology division. So I just want, I don't know if this is a comment or a question. So the presentation really got my mind running. So with a lot of things, a lot of ideas, looking at the industrial revolution and also the School of Social Science. In many cases, we feel like we are not very much related to the industrial side of the country because we are in social sciences. But looking at how do we leverage, that's what I've been thinking about, and trying to use AI and to look at ideas and also to just try to empower also our students on how do we leverage this opportunity in the School of Social Science, or maybe say psychology division. And I'm also thinking there are a lot of us that would rather opt to look at AI to solve our psychological problems. If maybe I'm having some distracting emotions, I'll look at AI and see how AI can be able to interpret what I'm feeling. So at the same time, I'm also worried about cognitive overload of information that gets to be consumed by students at the same time. There's a study that we have done last year looking at how the students get to be affected by information that they are consuming every day before they come to class. And how does that affect their attention? And a lot of students get to be very much overstimulated, that what they are being taught in class, they are not giving it too much concentration because there's just a lot of things that is happening. And I also think, going back to what my colleague have said about empowering us lecturers and also empowering our students on the useful way of using or leveraging this opportunity so that it can be able to benefit us effectively instead of somehow stealing away certain creativity or stealing away certain cognitive abilities that can be of good importance in our fields. So yeah, just I don't know if that was a comment or that was just a question that needs a contribution, but that's just something that was just running my mind throughout when the presentation was going on. Thank you.
I think that's another topic for another discussion. You know, we keep on saying, let's use this thing, let's encourage them to use this thing, but yet we overlook the fact that we are overloading, you know, their mind, you know, with all this information overload.
Thank you, Interim Director. Uh, just want to reflect on the article, especially don't know where to start. I'm having multiple concepts in my mind. Of course, I'm the culturalist, I'm in culture and heritage. Where
Maybe introduce yourself.
I'm Dalifa from West in culture and heritage in school social science. Yeah, I'm seeing this multiple concepts in mind when we say this stay, don't live in culture and heritage. When you live means culture is living. And why is Prof. Concept of adopt and live in with times? Last week we have another concept that I adopted in strategic planning meeting, where the facilitators talk about when we are in a club or in a dance, when the drums change and the dance change, especially the student, they can know better. They can dance the piano, but when you change the drum, they can even change the dance. They can tap into what we call it, maskandi immediately. But I'm saying this because with the notion of culture and heritage. We know that there are vast debate evolving around the preserving of cultural heritage. Of course, with some we can name oral traditions, social practices, rituals, and so on. But we are now having a problems when we look at this fourth industrial revolution. That as culturalists, are we losing the fight for preserving the intangible cultural, either tangible or intangible cultural heritage? Is or are South Africans able to accommodate these emerging digital tools and global network in preserving the cultural tangible? We know that usually when the other scholars looking at the 4AR, they're saying it is centered on the urban core, with the rural areas or rural behaviors being relegated, some being a case studies, but not looking directly to the barriers of the 4AR in or in cultures and heritage. All those things bring to these questions that I think colleagues who were presenting maybe they can be able to tap. Thanks.
Thank you. We're going to allow the colleagues in the room to respond. There was a question with regards to graduates, not specifically so to agriculture, but it was an example. And also academics who are teaching different disciplines. Tell us why our students can plug and play in the job market. And there was a provoking conversation also on our cognitive ability in terms of the use of AI for and as we evolved to others, you know, and now the preservation of culture and heritage. What do you say about that?
Thank you so much. I would like to respond um, for the agricultural question that was posed. So there is no one size fits all answer. There are so many factors that could be leading to this high unemployment, particularly for agricultural students. I want to say that as a country, we currently do not have an oversaturation of agriculturalists, right? Because agriculture is very broad and vast and with different specializations. So the issue now of unemployment, I think it mostly comes from the disconnect between what we as universities teach and what the industry currently needs, right? Because when we sit, we do curriculum reviews and we invite people from industry to come and say, okay, come and have a look, particularly at what we are teaching, and tell us what are the actual skills that you require and which problems do you want to be solved, right? So how we try and address that is that we review the curriculum to make it relevant to the ever-changing industry challenges, right? And then we also try and do research that is community-based, whereby we go to the farmers, we do needs analysis to try and find out what exactly do they need, so that our research actually has impact. We don't do research that is only applicable in a greenhouse or in the lab, research that can actually be implemented by a farmer on the ground. So I think, as I was saying, in order for us to try and also assist to curb the unemployment, we also need to be intentional about incorporating agriculture, incorporating technology use, right? And making it in the forefront of the skills that our students have when they leave the university. Then in that way, it gives them the edge from the next agricultural student. So I'm happy that we have signed this MOU because it is actually going to put us into that position so that we push it intentionally to say our agricultural graduates have these 4IR skills, which will make them different from the next graduate that is in that same interview. So that is, I think, hence I'm saying we intentionally need to do it so that we can assist in trying to curb the whole unemployment situation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There's another question online, but I just want to add to it. I think our agricultural sector must formalize. It must be a formal sector, because we are producing graduates who have formal professional qualifications. So I think the sector must also be professionalized. It must be formalized so that our graduates are able to plug and play, similar to engineering. Engineering is also labor, but the qualifications in the sector has been formalized. So I think agriculture also need to catch up. Oh, there's a hand from we can't put your name in full from Morris. Abena, please go ahead. Morris, can you please go ahead? I'm not sure if you are unmute or it's us this side. You must give your voice. Okay, Morris, please unmute. Okay, while we are allowing you to unmute, you can come in when you are ready. We're gonna take in more respondents.
No, thank you. If I may comment, yeah, and it's a comment. I think this one is it's a big, big challenge. You know, I was just thinking about people say it's after the sport has experienced many accidents that we think of going to put in a. It's after some of us have gone very that we think of the petitions as sugar. I don't want to say much more. So somehow there is we will react, you know. But I'm encouraged that, and maybe let me put it this way, maybe we must think about, especially things that we adopt from somewhere else, because this language of AI it did not originate here. So maybe we can think of how institutions like the universities that are more organized can quickly apply themselves and already tell me in advance. Because I think it's after the damage, it's after I realized my life has gone, I don't even understand myself, only to find that what we call what overload, cognitive overload. I'm sure that not too many people are able to self-diagnose that actually I'm underperforming because there's no space in my head. Anything else. So we have to think about this a way of having warning labels on some of these things for people who have got access to analyze and also bring the warning labels in advance so that we don't get trapped.
Thank you. So the last question that we choose was on the preservation of culture and heritage. I'm gonna ask also John to come in and share your thoughts on how we can present such in the era of AI as we are trying to adapt. We don't want to lose our identity. We want to find ways of preserving it for the generation that comes after us.
Thank you very much. I also want to, this is just a response to.
Hello?
Can I pause? Let me take the audio is back on. Please go ahead to the online participant, Morris.
Good morning. Sorry, I was muted on your side. Good morning. I'm the visitor from Mabena from the Red Royal Hub. Thank you for inviting us, and can you allow me to read all people sitting in the panel? I just want to I'm not sure if it's going to be a question or is it Royal traditionally. Now we're talking about industrial revolution. It's a question. I just want to know where do they how can we incorporate them? Because I found out that we as traditional leaders and traditional leaders and royal leaders, we are. Remember, most of our royal leaders are considered to be uneducated. Even traditional leaders are considered to be uneducated. But we play a major role in our society. I forgot to mention that I'm a digital student at UNISA, and I'm looking at actually the royal leadership. So yeah, that is my question. I don't know how we can do that, or does it apply
that can be done, or yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. We've heard you loud and clear. We're gonna allow the others to respond.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. What I was just referring to in response to what Dr. Dalifat just said, and also adding on what Maurice has just said. I'm also from culture and heritage with a background of indigenous knowledge systems. I'm a lecturer there.
Are you responding to Maurice?
And Dr. Dalif.
You'll respond to Maurice.
So,
Okay, correct.
So what I normally teach in culture and heritage, I'm teaching memory studies. So what is the memory? Why are we having the memory, and why do we have to preserve the memory? And how to preserve the memory in the digitalization time. So what is it that we are using? One of the good examples that I can share, which I think colleagues can go and look at it, is that Eugene has created what they call open museum, whereby they're digitalizing it. The farm is around here in Mpumalanga. So they have launched that project, I think somewhere in April, May, around that issue. And that project, what they normally use, they use the VR, the photogenics, and other artificial intelligence to keep the memory going. But as someone who comes from IKS background, it has always been about a touch with reality. Like even if we preserve that memory, what about the key aspects, especially the identity that this is always talking about? It's always been left behind on the issues of digitality when we use this for AR. So during my teaching, it's where I cut across on those issues of preservations using the artificial intelligence to preserve our cultural knowledge and to preserve our indigenous knowledge, but at the same time, to at not impacting on the ones that our indigenous people are dominantly using it for their survival. For example, if you are, let's say you are documenting the medicinal plant use. The first thing first, when you go to a traditional healer, you need to know that that particular person lives with that knowledge. So there is a knowledge which you have to document, and there is a knowledge which you must at the ultimate end say, for you to be able to get the whole of this, you must go to a traditional healer. But it does not mean that you as a researcher, you don't know, because the traditional healer will give you all the details that you need to know, but it's you who has to always be on the side of keeping this person having their lives going on with the particular knowledge that they have. So therefore, the artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution is there in the preservation of indigenous knowledge and culture and heritage, but it's based on how we use it and try to also use what we call artificial sensitivity when we are working on the issues of identity. So there is in a GitHub, there is a way which we are using it to program so that we can be able to do what we call AI sensitivity, whereby we can get the identity to be part of it. It goes hand in hand with what Dr. Mzani has just said about loading our students. So when we look also at this, we also look at those issues of how AI can be incorporated to upload, and at the same time, so the space between the students and them. That's why I said it's one of my favorite. Technology is one of my favorite things because I spend a lot of time around it. But those are some of the components that come when we integrate the fourth industrial revolution within our life. But the bigger question that also comes in is in the issues of, as much as we benefit from, what is going to happen to unskilled and semi-skilled individual in the space who are maybe benefiting. Let's say for agricultural cookout lab, there are people who are working in the farm who are unskilled and others are semi-skilled. If technology is taking over in agriculture through modeling, because nowadays we are using modeling styles to understand the space, we are using the drones, we are using so much things. What is going to happen to those people? I think we will end up having those much of that because it would be like we are unskilled and the technology is taking us out. But those are some of the things that the institutions or this entity could start to look at them to say, if we are pushing this, what about this people?
Okay, additional responses to this?
Yeah, maybe just to add on Maurice's point, I think thanks, Maurice, for raising it the way you have raised the point, because I think that's what is important, raising the voice, because if the voice is not heard, it won't be given. So I'm really grateful that you are making that point for traditional voices. You know, on the presentation, we also mentioned the issue of the ecosystem. I think we have to be deliberate about who else, who should be in the, who's not in the room, in all spaces that are convenient. And that is why we must talk of the whole ecosystem being orchestrated. I'm pleased to say, and maybe if we can have contact with Maurice, hopefully we can also invite him online tomorrow to Thursday. And we contributed to the hosting of the worship and the Royal Houses conference, digital conference that's in the hall. And I think it's important for Royal Houses to be brought into the hall and the big role that they play in the communities, especially that their communities are the ones that most of the time are left with poor infrastructure. And they will also play a big role in influencing the responsible use of technology. So thanks for raising that point.
Mr. Mabena, all captured. Maurice, they need your contact details. If you can maybe send us your email address, and we will share it with the Gafisto Trust. Colleagues, does this conclude our dialogue, our discussions? No more further questions, but I think what is standing out is that the preservation, while we are moving along, adapting the 4 IRs and the 5 and the 6, those who are leading this industrialization, they are able to preserve what is their own. So as we follow, as we adapt, let us also do that. Colleagues, for closing remarks, I'm gonna call on Mr. Tabiso Rasomo, Programs Comms Chair from the Gafiso Trust. After he does closing remarks, we're gonna have a gifting session, and then we're gonna take a photo. Please don't leave. Thank you.
It's almost the end of the morning now, so I was about to say good afternoon, but I realized it's still morning. Sat here, you know, kind of the challenges that we have that come with OIR. What is encouraging is that in the discussions also, we have solutions, we have suggestions, and so because when we get OIR is here, and we have to utilize it, and we have to make sure that we integrate it in what we do, that it benefits those we serve, that it benefits organizations, that it benefits other people. So I think the challenge remains to move forward. The challenge comes in to FIR while we're still grappling with FIR. So, but the future seems bright. So it has been an absolute pleasure for us to join And this seminar is a milestone. There are many milestones that we seem to have reached today. This is one of the first interactions that we have in the university. That we are the first ones to so this seminar also understand that the world of academia and the development of communities and agencies can contribute to bring the digital divide for socio-economic inclusivity. We heard about how our communities in the rural areas need information, need to be assisted, and so you say the challenge remains. And the CIL reminded us of industry in our countries leveraging for the biggest access to data and connectivity, unemployment, and skills, and so as is in agriculture. So in the past week or so, we attended what's called a generative conference. And one was very interesting what we saw how technology is being used to develop farms. And this is, is very interesting in agriculture. And I think the university itself is located in an area where it can contribute and make it relevant, at least in the first instance, to the local communities. So that is really looking at us. Professor that called for us to change our advancements, change of the drum. So that is what we are being called to do. Note also the social science and psychosocial impact uptake in use of digital technology, specifically for the youth and children and to absorb digital technology is improving. Today, when I get into my house, searches me for my phone. It's true that she actually knows more about the phone than me, and I learn a lot from it. But that's and the future that you are looking at. I was also impressed to see that the culture and tradition in developing revolutions, as mentioned, makes them recognized as growth publishers widely in academic papers and in schools. You know that there's own church tells us jumps, cycles, and science and mathematics. Just like in the mathematics and roundabouts, it's not about the same to revitalize history, business knowledge. And the memorandum that we have sent today is also a challenge to the leadership of the university and the Gafiso Trust in implementing it. The challenges that are there is that it's going to implement it, be beneficial for all. So we hope that this will, as we move forward, we'll be able to provide beneficial benefits to the communities and to the institutions and to use it. So the university sent by see the chairman of the trust and all the challenges that you are facing. We are also thankful for all those who came and participated and see the value of this partnership. So we thank you for the program and online for the attendance and participation. And, expecting to is continue to think about ourselves for the commitments that we have. If I may just say that being in this province is not the first of values of trust. You know, we have worked in areas like Uzi and up to the border next to Waverley with those communities. So having this partnership with this team that establishes also a footprint in the province that we worked in the 90s and we worked in various other countries, but the one that I remember very well that inspired me was the one that just as I say, it's an area, agricultural area that is very challenging in the villages there have a lot of resilience. We found a school there and next to the river Border Post. And children from Swaziland just cross the fence to come into that school in South Africa. And it was very inspiring to see the contribution that we get that gradually saying re-establishes and expands our footprint, but it's a province that we've done a lot of work in. So this is an extension of what we've done before. And therefore, we are proud to be back here in this context now, in a new era. Thanks to everybody, my colleagues, the people who are the chairperson, the ICC, the CEO, the staff, my colleague, the Professor Bali, Professor Tita, and all the other contributions. We will leave this place inspired by what we had and by the challenges that we are facing. That's for all the people who are online. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. We're gonna get to a session of 15, and I'm gonna ask the Minister for Innovation and Research Support, Ms. Nombuleko Shombu, to come forward and present the gifts. Do we have somebody from the National Trust who can also be on the other side? And our cameras, please be ready. So we need these people. And I give for the chair, Tim Memutalo in his absence, he was with us in the morning. And a gift also for the COO, Mr. Themba Mola. And a gift also for the chair of program, Mr. Tadisora Martinez. Transform it. And a gift also for the head of program management office, Ms. Mujaji. Thank you, colleagues. This concludes the session. So we're gonna ask for all of us to take a photo. I will be guided by our professionals where we should send all of us here. Or wait, or outside.
Yeah.
Outside. Okay, please lead the way. Those who have not received the gift bags, please let us know after the photo. The orange ones, the orange. And to our colleagues online, goodbye and thank you so much for your participation and for your time this morning. Bye. Yes, let's get our bags for the photo session. I think it would be a nice image. Oh,